Hello all, it is me once again. Duh. I have a question for you. Have you went to go find a movie that you really like Charlotte's Web, and you accidentally ended up watching Spider's Web? Or maybe you're a fan of Danny Gonzalez and you watched his review on the movie Ratatouille and realized that it's remarkably close to Ratatouille.
Stop trying to make rats sexy.
Or maybe you're scrolling through the Xbox game store and you happen to come upon a game called Stumble Guys and realize that it's almost identical to Fall Guys. No matter where you go, you're gonna find these unoriginal and rip-off stories everywhere. It's unfortunate, but it's true. The reason I'm asking you about this is because when I was originally making the first video I've ever posted on here, which was the Spawn video, I was doing research on Spawn and I wanted to actually watch the original movie. So when I was scrolling through Amazon to see if they had it, because at the time it wasn't actually streaming until I ended up recording the video. But anyway, I accidentally stumbled upon this movie called The Sinister Squad. Yes, it's almost identical to Suicide Squad. So pretty much ever since I made this Spawn video, I've been wanting to watch this movie and make a video about it. And you'll probably be able to tell sometime soon that I very much regret that, as I've seen this movie 6 times. 6 whole times. Before we get into it, let's just talk about the movie itself for a second. It was made by the production studio The Asylum, which, depending on how much you're on YouTube or in the internet, you've probably seen movies that these guys have made before. And I mean, their essentially business model is just waiting for big releases to come out and making their own ripoffs. They do have some original stories, but a mass majority of them are pretty much identical to movies that are making big money in the box office. I mean, hell, even if you just go to their website, they have things like The Headless Horseman, The Little Mermaid, Transmorphers Mech Beasts, Ape versus Mecha Ape, and the list goes on. And also, if you click on the titles, and it just keeps going. How they get the money to make all of these movies, I have no idea. But regardless, here we are with The Sinister Squad. It came out in 2016, the same year that the first Suicide Squad movie came out. It was written and directed by Jerry M. Inman, but don't get that confused with just Jerry Inman, who is apparently a famous ADR director and has a much bigger portfolio. Whoops. On Rotten Tomatoes, this movie has just the audience score of 19%. Let's just get into it. The movie immediately kicks off with a sting operation, and it introduces these characters: Pied Piper, Goldilocks, and Rumpelstiltskin. Instead of using DC characters, they're using fairy tale characters. And very similar to A Wolf Among Us, it's like a modern, real-world retelling of all of these characters. So like Goldilocks and Pied Piper are kind of like agents of sorts. But you'll find out very quickly that Rumpelstiltskin is supposed to be like the Joker of this movie. But what I find funny about that is that it's just these three alone in an alleyway in the middle of the day. So Rumpelstiltskin's just by himself walking around in broad daylight. And I feel like that's not something, you know, a notorious villain or something would do. And just a quick little disclaimer, I am going to be harking on this movie quite a bit, on top of the fact that I'm going to be making a lot of comparisons to Suicide Squad, but it's only because it's such a blatant copy of Suicide Squad. I feel like it's just appropriate to point out when we see the comparisons, like what they're pulling from other movie material. And then out of nowhere, when Rumpelstiltskin is trying to escape, this random guy in dark tactical gear shows up, and he essentially gives us a little bit of exposition. He declares himself as one of Death's messengers, and Death is trying to get Rumpelstiltskin because some time ago, Death hired Rumpelstiltskin to go get the magic mirror. For unknown reasons, the mirror broke. What I find really weird about this scene is, why does he kill himself? Because you would think that if he's trying to accomplish a mission, and if he was there in the first place to approach Rumpelstiltskin, that he would kidnap him or something. Instead, he just talks to him for a second and then kills himself. But later on, and you'll see what I mean, this is kind of contradicted because Death ends up complaining about how all of his guys are dying off. So this next portion vaguely introduces Tweedledee and Tweedledum, but more importantly, it introduces Alice. Yes, Alice from Wonderland. Something that the movie tries to imply a lot is that Alice is mad.
You have to be as mad as a hatter.
Most people think me quite mad. Monsters and magic. Uncommon nonsense, they say. Perhaps I am mad. Why, sometimes I've believed as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast.
Even the way that she kind of portrays herself to other people, she sounds more like the Mad Hatter than she does Alice, which would have kind of been interesting if they took that route. Like the Mad Hatter is running an asylum, supernatural, fairy tale, crazy people.
So sorry you're unable to speak. I'd prefer to be absolutely certain you've lost your powers of persuasion before loosening that silver tongue of yours.
Rumpelstiltskin's powers confuse me a little bit because in the beginning of the movie, he uses his powers for a brief moment with touch and eye contact, and he does say wait, but based on the way that the scene is shot, it seems more like it was touch that activated the powers.
Where is it, huh? Where is it? I told you.
So here, when his mouth is all covered up and she says that she doesn't want him talking so he doesn't use his powers, I feel like it's not earned, or it doesn't end up making sense in the scene, because before he didn't really use his words, or the movie didn't express him using his words to use his powers. Also, I think they just wanted an excuse to do like the Hannibal Lecter face mask.
New cellmate, as it were.
The big bad wolf.
Daddy was our first recruit. That's a good wolfie. First of many.
Before I remember,
He said, before I remember.
will one of the tweeters please forget to give the good doggy a proper hosing? That little lemon is called a tad right.
As you can see, your meddlings brought all sorts of grim beasties and monsters from your world to mine. You've also let something else in. Something worse.
So this is where the exposition starts to be brought onto us, and she explains a little bit about the mirror, and she explains a little bit about his involvement with death and his meddling.
Blink twice if you've understood me.
But what's confusing here, and becomes more confusing later on, is because not only is this same exposition expanded upon but repeated multiple times throughout the movie, but every time they explain it, Alice forgets. I'll point it out later, but she always forgets, and then she asks questions like she's surprised when she's the one who's initiating Rumpelstiltskin's capture. It'll make more sense later on, but you'll see.
I'll leave you to think about it.
Continuity error. Sorry. Rumpelstiltskin the whole time is holding onto the bars as if the cage is already closed, and she's looking through the bars. As soon as they cut to Tweedledum, he's closing the cell door. Okay, so up next, and I'm just going to explain it real quick, and I'll let you watch the whole scene, but this is the scene that introduces our next character, Bluebeard, who in this movie is kind of like a weird combination of Katana and Captain Boomerang from the Suicide Squad, in the sense that he has kind of like the look and the skill set that Captain Boomerang has, but his knives themselves, as it'll explain, contains the souls of the people he kills, kind of like Katana's sword. But the scene is just, not only is it super abrupt and weird, it's the way that it's edited almost seems like a weird sexy type of fight thing, where you think they're gonna like get into a little thing and then start making out or something, but then the scene just immediately ends and Bluebeard gets captured. You'll see what I mean. Just watch the whole scene.
With a name like Bluebeard.
Yeah. So the whole scene is under 2 minutes long. I think it's somewhere around like 1 minute and 20 seconds. But I feel like there should have been a little bit more time to not only express the skill between both characters, to not only show how skillful Goldilocks is, but maybe how dangerous Bluebeard is. I don't know, but I just feel like that scene's just very odd, and it doesn't come together very well.
Honestly, I don't get it. If his powers aren't working, then he's just a glorified con man. Why do you want him?
It's not what he can do that I'm interested in. It's what he knows. Who he knows. I'm convinced he wants something from these messengers. Or perhaps more likely, that they want something from him.
See what I mean? Not only is she repeating the whole plot of the story again, but later on in the movie, when these exact same details are said by someone else, she forgets and is surprised by the whole thing.
Goes by Bluebeard, obvious reasons.
His beard is blue.
Has a set of blades he calls his wives. Somehow they make him stronger every time he kills someone.
Is that you in there, Goldie?
Is that you in there, Goldie? As you're clearly looking at her.
Oh, he quite fancies you, doesn't he?
Alright, moving on a little bit. This next scene introduces our next character, who I'm gonna just call the cannibal for the rest of this.
If I had to guess, I'd say witch.
But they explain who she is here shortly.
He's mine!
Oh, I'm sorry, am I interrupting? Don't I know you?
In case you haven't noticed yet, they use the same guy for every messenger that has dialogue, or every messenger that death possesses going forward. By that, I mean the same guy that they used that killed himself in the beginning of the movie. I get like cutting back on budget and stuff and like hiring less actors, but you'll see there's, you know, multiple messengers at a time in a scene. Why not, like, and their faces are covered up, so why not cycle through those actors for different scenes that Death is possessing one of his messengers? Or again, why do it at all when you can just have Death possess like a living or recently dead person and just use that body throughout the rest of the span of the movie?
You killed one of my messengers, didn't you? You did, didn't you?
See, he brings up that his guys are getting killed.
My name's Carabas.
Cannibal witch. I don't even know where to start.
So originally I thought this was supposed to be the witch from Hansel and Gretel because she's a cannibal. But based on the name, Carabas, I did a little research and it turns out that Carabas is actually the dark fairy. It sometimes is a witch in the old fairy tales, but she's what got restructured in Disney to be Maleficent. So very different directions for where this character is supposed to be. If anything, they should have probably just called her the evil witch or the dark witch and implied that she's from the Hansel and Gretel story, and it would make her whole personality make a little bit more sense.
Death's plan. Clock's ticking after all. Oh, splendid.
So this is where the movie's plot actually begins to start, I guess. Immediately after the cannibal is locked up, she's already making her way out of her straitjacket and she's trying to free herself. And then this happens.
I'm coming.
Why bang on the gate and make noise and then not do any gestures to stop Tweedledee getting harmed? And then he gets upset about it. It's your fault. She probably would have made enough noise for him to come down anyway, So that, I don't know, that whole scene just doesn't make any sense to me. So then the cannibal goes into the morgue, apparently, and finds the body of the guy who offed himself in the beginning of the movie so that Death can possess him and she can talk to him again.
Who you seek?
You need to seek a mint.
Suddenly, Death's messengers just show up. It doesn't imply how they got there, how they knew Death was there, or how they knew the body was there, or whatever. But the Death's messengers show up and the chaos ensues. Blackbeard ends up escaping and he has this little scuff with Goldilocks, and the big bad wolf kind of just throws him back into his cell. But what's stopping him from just escaping the same way he escaped before?
Bad doggy.
Everything with Bluebeard is kind of underwhelming in this movie. He always just has these really small scenes and he doesn't really do much. His whole character is kind of pointless. So this scene kind of incentivizes two more comparisons to Suicide Squad. One of them being the wrist explosives, which compares to the head implants from Suicide Squad. And then the introduction of our next character, the Queen of Hearts, or commonly referred to as Gilda in the movie, who is clearly supposed to be a copycat of Harley Quinn.
Hello?
Gilda, baby!
What's going on out there?
What's going on out there? You just shot a messenger. You just told Rumpelstiltskin that you guys were being attacked by Death and his messengers. You know what's going on out. I'm sorry. I know it's a small budget movie. I know I shouldn't be giving it so much crap. But why?
Who is she?
She's one of mine.
So she's nuts?
So she's nuts? What?
We're reasonably safe if she's near. She's unhinged, unpredictable, and unfortunately something of a secret weapon.
If she's unhinged and unpredictable, how is she safe? Doesn't that make her dangerous, untrustworthy? While I personally think this scene between Rumpelstiltskin and Gilda goes on for a little too long, I still think it's a little better than the interaction we got between Bluebeard and Goldilocks, because at least this gives us a little bit more into their dynamic and what kind of characters they are and how some of their decisions later on in the movie have more meaning. So now that she's finally convinced, they move over to the cell chambers and Gilda uses her powers of persuasion to control Bluebeard. This is kind of how they bring him into their team, I guess. But what they should have done is slapped another wristband on him just in case anything went wrong. And oh boy, do things go wrong.
Tell us what you know.
Thought you'd never ask. Well, he calls himself Death. Total hack.
Where's Rumpelstiltskin standing? I mean, I know he's standing like across the way from them, but it's weird that he's looking into the camera straight ahead when everyone else is standing at different parts of the room looking at him. So if anything, it just looks like he's staring at Bluebeard the whole time. And in case you didn't recognize, he's repeating the exposition again. Yes, he's giving us a little bit more detail and he's pretty much telling us why they're there. I just want you to remember that they're giving us the plot again, and not for the last time either.
Excuse me?
Alright, so now that the movie's kind of getting started, let's do a little speed run of the events that go forward, because a lot of little things happen that are kind of questionable. So the first thing is this little scene where Piper is trying to distract some of the messengers by saying,
Yo, mice!
but why don't they shoot him? They're there with guns, they're armed for a fight and stuff like that. But there's like 4 or 6 guys in a room, all armed with machine guns. What's stopping them from just shooting at him from like the 4 seconds that he was standing there? They just quietly just start following him. What is that? Then Goldilocks has this little moment where she kills 2 guys standing still, and even though the hallway's cleared, she still goes to hide behind cover and continue shooting anyway. And then right after this, Piper pops up and he hides on the opposite side of her cover while there's gunfire.
At least it's not mice.
Then Rumpelstiltskin and Gilda have this ridiculously long argument in the middle of this hallway when you can hear gunfire everywhere. There's clearly messengers running around, taking over the facility, but they're just right in the middle where they could be shot very easily, having a stupid conversation that's not going anywhere.
Really, you don't need me then.
Whoa, Kelda, baby, come on!
Then there's this little scene where the cannibal hides from the messengers and kills one of them, even though they're on the same side. But it's all just to talk to death again. But then he not only points out that he's running out of guys.
Running out of messages here, witch!
But he purposefully makes the bodies disappear when he leaves the body, which doesn't make any sense. Like, if you're worried about guys that you're running out of, first off, don't let the cannibal kill any of them because, she's on your side. 2, you can actually have them shoot at people. And 3, just use one body. You don't have to go around and possess different bodies and then dispose of them. Just use one.
Trust me, remember? It's okay. It's okay.
Sun's getting real low, big guy. This movie just turned into Avengers.
Sun's getting real low.
So now we have a brief little moment of Alice talking to herself, which I guess this is
Mustn't dally now. Taking too long, mustn't waste time.
This is
Planes,
her
but not
being
the game.
mad, and it vaguely introduces
You know
the White
loves
Rabbit.
games, don't
But
you,
it's really
Alice?
just a small scene to segue into our next character, the Mad Hatter.
Bring me Hatter.
Couple? Aren't there usually 4 of you?
Oh, that was pretty good. No, I'm not wearing different clothes. No, it's not a different day. And yes, you are going insane. Don't feel like you need to rewind to double check. Just trust me. My clothes are the same. Same day. Let's just move on. So Alice has this plan to send Hatter into the underworld now. And I'm assuming it's so that she can get more insight as to what's going on. Not that she really needs to, because like I've stated before, she pretty much knows at this point. Or at least she should. For some reason, this upset Goldilocks.
Are we really doing this, Alice?
As if it really affects her or the plan in any way, shape, or form. So because of her being upset, she makes sure to step away and go discuss her issues with Piper, even though she's only 3 steps away, like as if no one can hear.
What's wrong?
Are you serious? I can't believe she's doing this.
Desperate times, Goldie.
So Piper makes sure to go resume his little witch hunt and to go find Tweedledum. So back to Alice and the Mad Hatter and his little trip to the underworld. He brings up the scythe, he brings up a party, and he brings up a tire. And when he says that it has something to do with Rumpelstiltskin, she turns to him, all surprised once again, as if she doesn't know, when they have explained the plot of the movie so many times at this point. I don't understand. The only reason she's pretty much mad at this point is more so forgetful, if anything. I don't know if that was like a thing in Alice in Wonderland, her being forgetful. I don't think it was. So we cut back to Piper, who has found Tweedledum at this point. They've been having this really long hugging session because I guess they were bonding over the fact that Piper was acknowledging Tweedledee's death. And right after this, he gets shot by a messenger, which that messenger ends up getting killed by the control of the Queen of Hearts, or Gilda, or whatever she's called in this movie. But what I find strange is because they actually show the beginning of this scene right before cutting to Alice and the Mad Hatter, where the hug starts, cut away from them, and then come back when Tweedledum dies. But why not just keep that all one shot and just have it play as is? Because if you cut away, it makes it seem like the world's longest hug. I don't know. That just seems strange. So now that Gilda is running rampant and she's free, I guess, even though she still has the wrist bomb, and now that she's got access to the armory, she starts to taunt Alice and Rumpelstiltskin, I guess. And immediately following this, Piper ends up catching up to the cannibal, completely disregarding what's going on with Gilda. And he finds her here with one of Death's messengers again. Something else I kind of wanted to point out in terms of like writing and I guess, direction. In every scene between Death as one of Death's messengers and the cannibal, they always try to do this thing where she's like climbing all over him, or she's making gestures towards him and stuff that makes him uncomfortable, and he always makes a remark towards it. At the same time, he kind of lets her. Like in this scene, he's telling her what to do and they're talking about the plan, but she's like cradling him, or she's like koala hugging him almost.
Oh, you want Piper?
But if he hates that so much, why does he let her do it? I think he's got a thing for it and he just doesn't want to admit it. Hey, you know, you're into goth girls, or you're into some kinky stuff. I can't stop you. I think it would just feel more natural, especially him being Death, that they write his character being similar to hers. Him being kind of like this bland, almost meta character just seems kind of strange. I feel like if they wrote him to be more like her, him being this eternal entity that rules the underworld, I just feel like it'd be more fitting.
I will.
Is that an airsoft gun?
Then do it.
Gotcha.
So he, of course, gets the drop on her and he brings her back to the cell chambers. And this is finally where, you know, the whole climax and everything starts to come together, I guess.
Bring me one of the bodies.
The messengers?
Yes.
So now Alice is kind of making a new deal with Death. And the deal is pretty much that she gives him Rumpelstiltskin and he leaves their realm in peace. So he immediately turns around, possesses another messenger, and he makes a deal with Rumpelstiltskin. This deal is he takes Rumpelstiltskin's body so that he can live in our world, and he gives Rumpelstiltskin the underworld. I'm not sure if that's completely a fair trade, because Death can possess anyone he wants. But of all people's body, he wants Rumpelstiltskin's body. I don't know, I just think that's strange. He says it's something to do with how Rumpelstiltskin's body is strong and it won't deteriorate the same, but says who? What part of this movie implies that Rumpelstiltskin's body is like not going to deteriorate the same way? Is it because of his powers? Because as far as we can tell, all of his powers seem to do is control people the same way Gilda's powers does. So in order to retrieve the scythe successfully, Rumpelstiltskin decides to kill off the Queen of Hearts, to retrieve it, to make it more believable, I guess.
Yeah, to look believable.
At this point, we don't know what that means. Obviously, I do, because I've seen this movie too many times. But anyways, with her dead, this now means that Bluebeard is out of his trance and he's free again, which wouldn't have been an issue if they just strapped another wrist bomb to him as well. But so he then turned on Goldilocks, and honestly, at this point, I don't know if I've been referring to him as the big bad wolf or Wolfie or whatever. I'm just going to keep calling him Wolfie. But he turns on Goldilocks and Wolfie ends up losing it, and he goes into some feral state. So he goes after Goldilocks. Somehow, out of nowhere, Bluebeard spontaneously shows up back, pops up all skateboard status behind Piper, and he stabs the guy. So now Death is back, and they start to get the party started. The ritual. We cut back to Goldilocks and Wolfie, and after running for a little bit, she just gets cornered by him, and all she has to do is kiss the guy. Yeah, a little love on furry action over here, if you know what I mean. You know what she reminds me of? I don't know if you guys ever watched the original Ben 10, and how dare you if you haven't. It's the best version of Ben 10. She kind of reminds me of that girl from the episode, you know, the one. I can't think of her name at the moment, but I remember there was an episode of Ben 10 where he becomes the werewolf for the first time. And yes, I know it's an alien and it's not really a werewolf. Shush. I understand. I'm calling it a werewolf. But when he turns back into Ben and he thinks that she's interested in him, she's like, oh, I just kind of wanted you as like a pet.
I thought you really liked me.
Well, that was before you turned back into, well, you. Just not as cool as when you were a Yennel douchey. I figured I could train you, tame you, you know.
I know it's supposed to be like a Beauty and the Beast thing, but I like the Ben 10 comparison better. So now that Wolfie is snapped out of it, they make their way back to the chambers, and relatively mediocre fight ensues. And in this fight, Mad Hatter has somehow become useless. I understand he was just like in a trance and he just took some kind of drug that put him in the underworld. But how did he go from this guy that was bashing a messenger's face in with a teapot to this guy who's like, tucking himself in a corner and he's like shooing a guy with his hat? I don't know. Just a very strange turn in character. This fight goes on for a little bit, so let's jump ahead. So the ritual is almost done at this point, and Alice frees Rumpelstiltskin, thinking that he has like some kind of moment to help them and he can redeem himself, so on and so forth. But he pretty much saves the day by using the bomb. And while they do have a little moment where they had to explain it, even though it was pretty self-explanatory.
You do what he told me to. He said to blow up the wristband when they shook hands and I'd be rid of them both.
He mind controls Alice so that she goes upstairs and she activates the bomb in the very moment that he shakes Death's hand in the form of the cannibal at this point. And even though he sacrifices himself, and they explode, somehow Piper, whose body was being used in the ritual and who's laying directly under Rumpelstiltskin and the cannibal, somehow survives the explosion.
No, it's not.
Piper!
Did we win?
Like how? This bomb that obliterates, evaporates two living people, not even like a foot away from him. He somehow comes out unscathed. And he's healed. Somehow. He got stabbed. He was bleeding out.
He went into shock.
Okay. I'm kind of skipping ahead a little bit because I'm going to be talking about this anyway, but there's a small bit that does explain why he survives, but to me doesn't make sense. It just could have been done a little different, because essentially they explain that he was given his soul back and that's why he's alive. It doesn't explain that his soul comes back and puts his body back together. He'd still be blown up. I still stand by it, but it does make sense if you've seen the movie. So let's move on with the rest of the video. They have saved the day. Death is gone. Rumpelstiltskin is dead. The cannibal's dealt with. What's really weird about this scene, though, is they kind of edit it, at least when I watched it. The way the editing kind of plays out makes it seem almost as if when Goldilocks asks this question,
I wonder what Rumpelstiltskin got out of the deal.
And Alice does this, it seems almost like Alice was Rumpelstiltskin for a moment. Like when he died, he ended up taking her body. Like I know that was never part of the deal, but for the kind of character I feel like they were aiming for Rumpelstiltskin to be, it would be more in character for him to do like a 180 on everyone and turn on Alice in his like dying moments and takes her body when he dies. But no, she just goes upstairs and he's waiting for her so that he can explain everything that's happening, even though it's very easy to understand what's going on because everyone knows already and the audience already knows. It's just really weird when the audience has seen everything that's going on and has heard the plot multiple times just for the characters to explain everything that's going on with each other. It's like somehow the characters in the movie aren't keeping up with the audience. It's almost like the director did what he was supposed to do by conveying the story and what was going on, but didn't realize it, so he made sure the characters repeated it multiple times.
Maybe you can make something out of them. Your own little Sinister Squad.
He did the thing. He said the thing. That's the title of the movie. Too bad it doesn't make any sense, though. I mean, like in the Suicide Squad, it's easy for Rick Flag to say, oh, you've got yourself your own Suicide Squad, because they're a group of people, a squad, who are going into a suicide mission. Ergo, a Suicide Squad. But you can't have a Sinister Squad, because that would imply that you've got a squad of sinister people, but all of these people are not sinister. Actually, none of them are, because it's heavily implied that they're all good people in some way, shape, or form. And they're not exactly like a team. Like, yeah, it was like a team effort to accomplish, saving the situation. But it's not like they're going to go on and be a team and operate as a team. At least it doesn't come off that way. So to say, oh, they're your own little Sinister Squad just doesn't make sense. It's just another reason why this movie can be so easily called a ripoff of Suicide Squad, because they're just picking things that they liked from it. To finish off the movie, finally, Rumpelstiltskin and the Queen of Hearts live happily ever after in the underworld, ruling as king and queen. He finally got his clean white teeth, and she got white hair, apparently. And that is the end of the Sinister Squad. I am so glad I don't have to ever watch this movie again. I don't know why I've seen it so many times. I thought I was even going to have to watch this side by side so that I remembered things, but it's like engraved in my brain. I'll unfortunately remember every line from this movie and probably be referencing it for years to come. And I hate that. In all, the movie's not great, but it's also not bad. I mean, the thing is that there's actually a decent premise for this movie. Like, if there was a big name director, big stars, big movie production company, great writers, so on and so forth, there is kind of a premise of fairy tale characters in a modern day retelling, so on and so forth, just like they've done before with like The Wolf Within, The Wolf Among Us. So just like they've done with The Wolf Among Us or Bright, there's an idea of retelling like these characters in a situation where they have to work together and face some bigger threat. I don't think Death was the right person to choose in this scenario because he's more mythological and almost biblical depending on which version you're looking at, while they're all fairy tale characters, so it doesn't blend very well. You'd have to choose some kind of character from a fairy tale. I mean, the big bad wolf could have been a bad guy all on his own, but they've kind of done that before, especially with like Puss in Boots, or even Rumpelstiltskin in some way, shape, or form, or the Queen of Hearts if that was retold. They could have been the main villains, just like the Joker normally is in the Suicide Squad. But let me know what you thought of this video. If you want to see more videos like this, I've always kind of wanted to do these movie reviews or just kind of like sitting down talking about goofy movies that I find. Have you seen this movie? I mean, I understand like supporting small movie makers and stuff, but if you're someone who doesn't want to pay, this movie is on YouTube and it's free to watch. So go ahead and watch it, or don't. I don't actually recommend you go watch it, but it's there if you want to. Was I too harsh? Was I not harsh enough? Do I care? No, I don't care. I know I haven't been super consistent with videos and not too sure how many people are actually tuning in because I know I'm still a small channel, but I will be making more consistent videos. There's just a lot going on and I'm trying. But I will be making more consistent content. I actually have a few ideas of videos that I want to make, but sometimes those change because sometimes video ideas are kind of like phases, and then by the time I'm making the video, I'm like, do I really want to make the video? I'm glad I don't have to watch this movie again, and I don't recommend you watch it. Go watch something else. Go watch Fallout. It's a great show. I'm not done with it, so don't spoil it for me. If there's any particular movies that you do want me to look into or shows that you want me to talk about, I know there's a lot of things to look through right now, and there's things coming out left and right, so let's talk about it. But with all that being said, I'm gonna do something else other than watching this movie. I think I'm gonna play some Halo. That sounds fun. I want to play some Halo right now, and I'm going to enjoy my life for a little bit. So I hope you all have an amazing day, and to all of my two-legged, four-legged, and even six-legged friends, yeah, I know you're out. I know you're out there. I hope you all have an amazing day, week, night, whenever you're watching this. Doodaloo!
Toodaloo! Wonder Bread.